Hi, do you sharpen anything? If you do and you have a lot, like kitchen knives, scissors, planes, chisels, then a slow-speed water-cooled grinder like this might be worth it for you. It is actually a modern version of what our ancestors had, a stone wheel powered by human force, sometimes even cooled with water. When you look at the edge, it actually tapers off, and where there is the least material, it can easily heat up due to friction during grinding, and the material can become damaged. In layman's terms, it is said that the edge doesn't hold. That's why it's good when the RPM is low, and ideally when it's also water-cooled, just like this grinder from Triton. It is a well-made imitation of the grinder from the Swedish brand Tormek, which is a leader in this segment. And the Triton grinder is compatible with accessories from the brand Tormek, which is important. It's not that Triton doesn't offer its own accessories, it does, and quite a wide range at that, which is sufficient for the vast majority of people, like myself, who are hobbyists. However, if someone has higher demands, whether in terms of quality or the variety of accessories, the advantage is that the accessories from Tormek will fit this grinder. This wheel has a diameter of 250 mm, a width of 50 mm, and a bore of 12 mm, with a grit size of 220, which are exactly the same specifications as the standard wheel from Tormek. This wheel is very high quality. It's made of aluminum oxide, which is corundum, and it will be sufficient for the vast majority of tasks. So far, we've only talked about this wheel, but there's another one on the other side. I call it a honing wheel because it's actually a plastic wheel with a leather strap on it. In the past, leather was used for honing, but you might also come across terms like honing or sometimes lapping, which are borrowed from other languages but essentially mean the same thing. First, you perform the basic sharpening on the grinding wheel, and then, on the honing wheel, you remove the burrs from the edge and possibly polish it to a mirror finish. So, both of these wheels are included. The honing wheel is mounted on the grinder, while the grinding wheel is separately packed to prevent damage, so you need to mount it yourself. There are two flanges, a nut, and be careful, it has a left-hand thread. The accessories also include a 19 mm wrench, which is a bit basic, but it's more than enough to tighten it. Be careful not to tighten it too much. I believe that if you apply too much force, the wheel could crack, and that would be a shame. The construction of the grinder is actually very primitive. It has an induction motor and a shaft with two wheels, but it is not directly driven. Instead, a small shaft extends from the induction motor, and you use this screw to adjust the pressure of the small shaft on the rubber runner. After finishing the work, it's good to release the pressure so that the rollers don't press a dent into the tread, because instead of a quiet and smooth operation, it would then make a kind of... I hope I explained that sufficiently technically. You can find the grinder specs, such as its 120W power consumption and a speed of 125 revolutions per minute. You'll also find that it weighs almost 15 kilograms, which is important because, as I say, there's not much to invent or mess up on this grinder, but stability is crucial to ensure that the accessories hold their position relative to the grinding wheel. Another important thing is this bar with a guide rod, and that's actually one of the most important features on these grinders. You guide the sharpened tools at the correct and, most importantly, consistent angle. This is something we amateurs especially appreciate, as we simply don't have that so-called skill. But even professionals won't turn down a grinder like this because it's faster, less strenuous, and often more precise. Let's quickly move on to the other items you'll find in the box, including of course the user manual. If the text is too small for someone, like it is for me, there's nothing easier than downloading it from the Triton or uni-max websites. Then there's a very important thing, which is this kind of gauge. Using it, you can set the relative position of the wheel and the tool being sharpened, depending on the wheel's diameter and the desired sharpening angle. Then there's this kind of sharpening stone with a grit size of 220 on one side and 1000 on the other. It's not for dressing the wheel, but for changing the coarseness. You are essentially using the coarse side to simulate a stone with a lower grit size with greater roughness. If you need to remove more material, or if the edge is more damaged, you can roughen it up this way, perform the grinding, and then restore it to its original state using this fine side before the final grind. Then in the package you will find a tube with grinding or polishing paste. Some also refer to it as honing or lapping paste. It is applied to the leather wheel and helps you achieve a perfect edge. If you run out, Triton indeed also offers additional polishing paste as an accessory. And the last thing is a very basic holder, a basic jig, which is used to make so-called straight edge, meaning carpenter's, joiner's chisel, or some plane irons. I'll show you how to do it now. First, you need to attach the tray to the grinder. It can be attached in two different positions depending on the diameter of the wheel. Now we have a brand new 250 mm wheel, so we'll place the tray in the lower position. When we eventually wear it down, we'll need to raise the tray a bit so that the wheel is always at least partially submerged in the water. When you pour water in, the wheel will absorb it, and you will need to keep adding water until the level stabilizes at the maximum mark, which you can see on the side. Only then can you start grinding. Never grind or sharpen on a dry stone. Now, let's set the tool in the holder and its position relative to the wheel. We will be grinding against the direction of the edge, and we want an angle of 25 degrees. So here we set the wheel diameter to 250 degrees. Here we set it to 25 degrees and tighten. And the gauge is actually placed with this rounded part on the wheel and the other part on the tool. But it's much better to first and foremost place the jig on the wheel carefully and then properly insert the tool's edge between the wheel and the jig. This way you are guaranteed the same angle every time. You can adjust the relative position either by changing the position of the guide rod in relation to the wheel or by changing the position of the tool in the guide sleeve. Once we have it set up, we can turn the grinder back on and start sharpening. We sharpen with light pressure, moving from side to side to use the entire width of the wheel, thereby wearing it down evenly. We continuously check the edge, and when it seems to be evenly sharpened across the entire surface, we can turn off the grinder and move on to the honing wheel. Someone will actually use the same guide jig, which means they will move the guide rod to the horizontal position, but they will need to set the correct angle again. But from what I've seen from the pros, they actually hone by hand, honing both the back and the edge. And because honing doesn't remove as much material, there's no risk of damaging the edge by holding it at a slightly different angle. Unlike grinding, where you can grind against or along the edge, here we hone solely and exclusively along the edge, in this case. Well, we hone until first all the burrs are removed, and second until the edge is of the desired quality. The smoother the edge, the longer the part will last. If we have finished sharpening and will not continue working, the first thing we need to do is remove the water tray, as the wheel should not remain permanently submerged in the water. Loosen the pressure of the shaft on the rubber tread, and you can also use the protective textile cover, which is sold separately and prevents dust from settling on the grinder. You can handle basic sharpening with this grinder as it comes, but if you want to sharpen other things like kitchen knives, scissors, carving chisels and other items, you will need additional special jigs, which we will discuss in another video. If you like this grinder from Triton, please check the link below the video and look forward to another polished video. Thanks for watching, have a great day and keep sharpening.